And I call the member for Menzies.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I fully support the member for McPherson's motion. And I do so having listened to the speeches given by those opposite. For many months, I have stood in front of the Iranian diaspora at many rallies and said that we want this to be non-partisan. We want this to be non-partisan. And where there have been a progression on this issue, whether it was the removal of the regime from the status for women at the United Nations, we have praised you for it. Where there was limited and targeted sanctions, we have praised you for it. So we don't come in here with this motion lightly. And yes, there is a convention that on national security and foreign affairs, it's a largely bipartisan thing. But that is not a blank check. It's not a blank check for everything. And it reeks of hypocrisy to hear that from those opposite. When you say that on the one hand, yet we've seen the Minister for Defence come in here and hurl abuse at this side for our decisions and our policies on national security and defence. So you will forgive me and forgive us for noting the hypocrisy, and we will stand up for the Iranian diaspora in Australia. We hope to do it in a bipartisan way, but when that doesn't occur, we will hold you to account. That is our duty as members of this place. 2 nights ago, I had the fortune of speaking at a dinner in Melbourne. At that dinner, it was put on by members of the Iranian diaspora who work in the medical profession. In attendance was Kylie Moore-Gilbert, and a member of the Labor Party, and it had bipartisan support, and that's the way it should be. But when speaking to that room, I acknowledged their concerns and their courage. They were there to celebrate Nowruz, the Persian New Year, but they did so with mixed emotions because they know it's hard to celebrate when your own home country is being devastated and terrorised like it has. This isn't a normal time, and we must recognise that. Those opposite pointed to the supposed lack of action over the last 10 years. That is irrelevant because it all changed from the killing of Mahsa Amini. We know that. You know that. The Iranian diaspora knows that. And the Islamic Republic regime knows that. That is why they reacted like they did. That is why we saw the deaths of over 500 people. That is why tens of thousands are now in prison. That is terror in its purest form. Terror over a people who deserve so much better. And in my speech to that group, I said I'm also new to politics. And I've noted that when you're making decisions, you can walk through a values door. That's what drives you, principles of freedom and democracy and serving other people. But you can also walk through a power door where you're driven by your own selfish needs. You're driven by the lust and seductiveness of power. Now, this regime, there was a revolution in 1979, but they walked through the power door. They walked through the power door and they slammed it shut after them. Now, that door is being banged on. It's being banged on by young Iranians, young women and young girls, and the regime is terrified and they know it. So when you speak to people in my seat in Menzies, and I have the largest Iranian diaspora in Australia, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm proud of them, they tell me this is a unique moment in history. And they want to give it the best chance that it can. And so they're pleading with us, they're pleading with you to give it its best chance. So when you stand up here and say, well, nothing happened in the last 10 years, and shame on you, that is sending a message that you don't acknowledge this is a unique moment in history. You don't acknowledge that this is a time for us to give more power to their arm, for us to support the young women, the young girls who are standing up to bullets, getting imprisoned for dancing, just for dancing. So I commend the motion, and I commend my colleague in the Senate, Senator Claire Chandler, for the work she did in asking for this, because we listened to the community, we listened to those on the front line. And on the eve of that report being handed down, the Attorney General's Department presented the problem that we have before us, a supposed problem in the criminal code, and we accept that. But guess what? That's what we do in this place. We get to amend legislation. If it's not fit for purpose, we can change it. And the criminal code is not fit for purpose. You have our support to change it. It'll sail through this place and it will sail through the Senate. Work with us give more power to their arm. It's a unique moment in history and they deserve our support.
I thank the honourable member for Menzies.